Battlefront Twilight Company. It's a book that ties in with the Battlefront game from EA and Alexander Freed's first novel. He's done well for the most part considering it's his first book. It's an enjoyable read from the viewpoint of the rebels that so far at the front lines we don't even see them in the movies. Ultimately, the book reads a bit like Aliens. Remove Ripley and turn the alien into the Empire, and that's pretty much what you have here. A group of Marines, or in the case of Star Wars, rebels, fighting an advanced enemy in combat. There's no lightsabers, Force or Skywalkers here, it's purely about soldiers. The book follows Hazram Namir, an infantry soldier in the Rebellion's 61st Mobile Infantry Unit, aka Twilight Company, in its withdrawal from the Mid-Rim, the fight on Hoth and the fight for the liberation of Sullust. It's an interesting book and Alexander Freed has done a good job writing the battles and creating the set pieces. The characters are a bit of a mixed bag in Twilight Company though. Some of them are quite interesting, like Ivory Chalice, a former Imperial governor. Seeing her fight for her own equality and respect in Twilight Company is fun to read and probably the part of the book that has the most depth. Her interactions with those in command of Twilight Company and especially with Namir are always interesting. I particularly enjoyed Chalice's character and story and I thought Freed wrapped her arc up very well. I actually want to read more about Chalice in other books and that's a compliment. Her story was completely wrapped up with no loose ends and I still want more of her character. That says to me she was very well written and that means Freed has done a good job with her. On the other hand, Namir, the main character, is quite simply two-dimensional. To be honest, Namir is so retarded I'm surprised in each new scene we don't see him licking the windows before he realises he's a soldier, and this is the main problem with the book. It doesn't matter how good the set pieces, battles or supporting characters are if the main character has less spark than a wet match. To put it kindly, Namir is what you might call a bit slow. He doesn't seem to understand anything, and I do mean anything. I would have thought that with the amount of times he reminds other members of Twilight Company that he's been fighting wars longer than most of them, he would have some kind of an understanding of battle strategy, campaign strategy and the ability to read people. But when orders come in from Rebel High Command concerning campaign strategy and the next move in the war effort, Namir likes to remind himself that he doesn't understand or care. He fights on the ground and that's it. He doesn't even care for the cause the rebels are fighting for, he just fights because that's all he knows. Order after order come in and Namir never seems to understand or care. He's really not a very deep character. His motivations are weak and when you have a main character like that it can make the book feel like it drags sometimes because of the repetition. Don't get me wrong, Freed hasn't left Namir like that throughout the whole book, but when he's faced with a choice, Namir seems to take forever to come to a realisation, and that means more repetition and it gets very old very quickly. It's not so much the choice he has to make, it's how long he takes to make that choice, and the constant repetition of his thought process makes it feel like it drags. It would have been better to see Namir grow throughout the whole book, as events happened, rather than giving him an epiphany moment near the end. At least then he would have felt like an actual character capable of growth, rather than just reacting to a difficult situation. Namir barks when he laughs. Freed's made sure we know that. 90% of the time when Namir laughs, it's phrased exactly like this. Namir barked a laugh. Freed never mixes that up. Be prepared to read the phrase Namir barked a laugh at least a dozen times. The repetition here too is really quite irritating. Between Namir's weak motivations, slow and repetitive thought process and the phrase Namir barked a laugh, he can really be quite irritating. He's by no means the worst character I've read in a Star Wars novel. That honour goes to Lannery Brock from Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void, but in the next Battlefront book or the next book Freed writes, I would like to see a bit more depth and variety in the main character throughout the book and not just at the end. However, the book is brought back up by the battles. From boarding an Imperial ship in space to fighting on the magma-covered mountains of Sullust, Freed has done an excellent job creating set pieces for the battles that take place in Twilight Company. Every battle is fun to read and has its twists and turns, and it very much lives up to the Battlefront name. The way the crew of Twilight Company talk between battles is also interesting to read. From the veteran soldiers like Gadra and the Besalisk, to fresh meat like Roach, there's always an interesting interaction between them all. One downside I would point out, however, is that I think the book could do with a bit more of that interaction. Some characters die, then more are brought in, then some of them die, and while Freed has done a good job instilling the sense that anyone is capable of dying in the war, I felt the book would have benefited by having some of the characters stick around longer. I felt like too many of them died before I really got to know them, and I find that a bit disappointing when they've been in the book for a third of the whole story. The book also shows us Nian Num's roots in the rebellion, how he fought on Sullust in his own rebel cell and how he crosses paths with the Rebel Alliance. It's a nice bit of extra depth for one of the side characters from the movies. Overall, I did enjoy Twilight Company. While there are a few issues, I still found it to be an entertaining book. If a bit more of the side characters' interaction was traded for a bit less of Namir's repetition, the book would have benefited greatly, but it's still a good book. The battles are always interesting and it's nice to have a view of another part of the rebellion. Freed's first novel is good. It's not amazing, it's not fantastic, and there are things he needs to work on in the future, but he definitely did a good job, and Twilight Company is an entertaining book.